Now, this is interesting, and this is actually from the antimedia.org, authored by Darius Shatem Masabi. Posted at Zero Hedge, though, naturally. I'll tell you, Jason, what's your favorite site? If you had to pick one site and you're only allowed to look at one site per day, what website would it be? Without even thinking twice, Zero Hedge. Because they don't just discuss things financial or whatever. It's everything, economy, financial, to war, to scandal, it's a great site. Long live Zero Hedge. U.S. military establishment study admits the American empire is collapsing. And I'm thinking, I started doing these videos years ago because I could see this coming. And I'm seeing proof of it coming. And okay, this and that, okay, yep. So I start voicing it on YouTube. Start getting followers, subscribers, whatever. They start to see it. We start talking about these things. And yeah, it's dragging on year after year after year. But, as far as planet Earth history goes, it's a blinking of an eye over the last, 10 years. 10 years is nothing. The Roman Empire did not crash and burn in 10 years. But you saw signs of it going down the freaking tubes. And you can actually do a comparison of the Roman Empire versus the United States, and you will see striking and shocking parallels. Having said that, let's see what we got here. A new study conducted by members of the U.S. military establishment has concluded that the U.S.-led international global order established after World War II is fraying and may even be collapsing as the U.S. continues to lose its position of primacy in world affairs. But you already knew that. The Webbot told us how many years ago this was coming? Along with the death of the dollar meme coming, right? In brief, the status quo that was hatched and nurtured by U.S. strategists after World War II and has for decades been the principal beat for Department of Defense is not merely fraying, but may in fact be collapsing, the report states. The report, published in June by the U.S. Army War College's Strategic Studies Institute, evaluated the Department of Defense's approach to risk assessment at all levels of Pentagon policy planning. The study was supported and sponsored by the U.S. Army's Strategic Plans and Policy Directorate, the Joint Staff J5 Strategy and Policy Branch, the Office of Deputy Secretary of Defense for Strategy and Force Development, and the Army Study Program Management Office. Imperial hubris, whatever. As explained by Nathan Freyer, the project director and principal author of the report, the U.S. and its defense establishment are stumbling through a period of hyper-competition. From Freyer's point of view, the current era is marred with furious battles for positional advantage at a number of levels, whether national, transnational, or extranational. Freyer explains that America's failure to cope is the result of hubris, which is reminiscent of Imperial Hubris, a book by Michael Schur, the former head of the CIA's Bin Laden unit. Imperial Hubris is, but also warned the U.S. about the very controversial and hubristic reasons it was losing the war on terror. Hubris means exaggerated pride of, or self-confidence, according to Merriam-Webster. Technically, the report does not officially represent the Pentagon, though it does represent the collective wisdom of those consulted, including a number of Pentagon officials and prominent think tanks such as the American Enterprise Institute, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and last but second to last, the RAND Corporation, and finally the Institute for the Study of War. Nonetheless, the report involved consultation with key agencies across the Department of Defense and the armed forces and encouraged the U.S. government to invest more heavily in surveillance, better propaganda through strategic manipulation of public opinion and a wider and more flexible U.S. military. The report states the following. And notice how that was in there. Better propaganda through strategic manipulation. And in case you're wondering, propaganda against you, the American citizen. Not our enemies, not the other people. You. NQ Fake News, CNN, and CNBC for further information. So this report states, while as a rule, U.S. leaders of both political parties have consistently committed to the maintenance of the U.S. military superiority over all potential state rivals, the post-primacy reality demands a wider and more flexible military force that can generate advantage and options across the broadest possible range of military demands. The U.S. political leadership, maintenance of military advantage, preserves maximum freedom of action. Finally, it allows U.S. decision makers the opportunity to dictate or hold significant sway over outcomes in international disputes in the shadow of significant U.S. military capability and the implied promise of unacceptable consequences in the event that capability is unleashed. The year-long study concluded that the Department of Defense should discard its outdated risk conventions and change how it describes, identifies, assesses, and communicates strategic level and risk-based choices. As investigative journalist Nafid Ahmed, observed, these are the very strategies that have led the U.S.'s declining power in the first place. Further enacting these failed strategies will only exacerbate the problem and demonstrates America's refusal to go down without a fight. The blame lies with resistant states, supposedly. According to Fryer and his team, the dangers currently challenging the U.S. don't just come from countries like Russia and China, and even North Korea or Iran, but also from the increasing risk of Arab Spring-style events that could potentially erupt all over the world. One might wonder then why the U.S. decided to support a number of these events, even to the great benefit of known jihadist movements that already existed within them. Ahmed also astutely points out that the report doesn't actually substantiate its claims that countries like Russia are a genuine threat to America's national security, aside from the fact that these countries seek to pursue their own core interests, as most countries should be free to do, within reason. According to the report, Iran and North Korea are neither the products of nor are they satisfied with the contemporary order. At a minimum, they intend to destroy the reach of the U.S.-led order into which they perceive to be their legitimate sphere of influence. They are also resolved to replace that order locally with a new rule set dictated by them. It is notable that the report does not list Iran and North Korea as nuclear threats, as traditional neoconservative propaganda often asserts, but simply as perceived threats to the American-led world order. The report also found that the international framework has been restructured in ways that are inhospitable and often hostile to U.S. leadership. For example, proliferation, diversification, and atomization of effective counter-U.S. resistance, as well as resurgent but transformed great power competition, are seen to be at the heart of this new international restructuring. According to the report, the U.S. is not prepared for these circumstances, and the report seeks to provide the U.S. with guidance to deal with these emerging scenarios. In all seriousness, hostility to the U.S. military did not develop in a vacuum. It is quite clearly the sheer arrogance of America's leadership and its incessant meddling in foreign affairs that have created a number of adversaries who are no longer willing to bow to American interests. Next is losing the propaganda war. Renegade Inc.'s Nafiz Ahmed also notes that the hyperconnectivity and weaponization of information, disinformation, and disaffection, the study team observes, is leading to the uncontrolled spread of information. The upshot is that the Pentagon faces the inevitable elimination of secrecy and operational security. Wide, uncontrolled access to technology that most now take for granted is rapidly undermining prior advantages of discrete, secret, or covert intentions, actions, or operations. In the end, senior defense leaders should assume that all defense-related activity, from minor tactical movements to major military operations, would occur completely in the open from this point forward. This information revolution, in turn, is leading to the generalization, disintegration of traditional authority structures, fueled and/or accelerated by hyperconnectivity and the obvious decay and potential failure of the post-Cold War status quo. Next is bad facts. Among the most dangerous drivers of the risk of civil unrest and mass destabilization, the document asserts, are different categories of fact. Apart from the obvious fact-free, defined as information that undermines objective truth, the other categories include actual truths that, however, are damaging to America's global reputation. And it looks like there's a few here. Fact inconvenient information consists of the exposure of details that by implication undermine legitimate authority and erode the relationships between governments and the governed. Facts, for instance, that reveal how government policy is corrupt, incompetent, or undemocratic. The next one, fact perilous information, refers basically to national security leaks from whistleblowers such as Edward Snowden or Bradley Manning, exposing classified, highly classified, sensitive, or proprietary information that can be used to accelerate a real loss of tactical, operational, or strategic advantage. Fact toxic information pertains to actual truths which the document explains, or complains, it should say, are exposed in the absence of context and therefore poison important political discourse. Such information is seen as being most potent in triggering outbreaks of civil unrest because it fatally weakens foundational security at an international, regional, national, or personal level. Indeed, fact-toxic exposures are those likeliest to trigger viral or contagious insecurity across or within borders and between or among people. And one thing comes to mind. John McCain's laptop got hacked. They stole the green screen fake beheadings. And he said, oh, the Russians put that on my laptop. Yeah, the Russians put that on there. I watched a video the other day that took that same video and then got the old, remember the, what was his name? Alex. The first guy that got his head cut off, the complete fake green screen nonsense. I was covering those videos back in those days. Alex or Alexis, something Alex, what was his name? Anyways, they took the one that's supposed to be real next to the fake one that was off of John McCain, the green screen, and then they played them both at the same time, and you can see them both doing the exact same movements at the exact same time. Fraud. That's the kind of stuff that makes people say, hey, wait a minute, you're putting that towards, you're lying. There's no real war on terror right now. Because you're saying this is this ISIS group, which doesn't even exist now. We realize now it's not even real. Hey, you're lying to us. Why are you doing this, right? It's going to destabilize your own government, ultimately, that kind of stuff. That's what comes to mind when I see that one. In short, the U.S. Army War College study team believe that the spread of facts challenging the legitimacy of American empire is a major driver of its decline, not the actual behavior of the empire, which such facts point to. And then finally, the wake-up call. Though the report throws the word adapt around often, the U.S. is clearly not willing to adapt at all if the only way it can deal with its issues is to strengthen the very sources of said issues in the first place. If the only tool the U.S. has is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. The more problems the U.S. faces, the more nails it sees in need of quashing. While some may laud a report in which advisors to the U.S. have acknowledged America's status as a dying power, the truth, as demonstrated in this recent analysis, is that the U.S. will not give up its place in global affairs without a fight. As the report states, the reality of this looming collapse should not be seen as defeatism, but rather should be a wake-up call. It says, take the Syrian conflict, for example. The more places Assad's military liberates, the more refugees are returning home, and the more concerts are being held. Syria, Russia, and Iran have achieved these mounting successes even in the face of direct American intervention, and yet the U.S. still refuses to leave the country. Irrespective of crimes committed by the pro-Assad axis, if the ultimate objective has been to reduce the suffering in Syria and end the war, The U.S. should admit defeat and move on, especially once ISIS caliphate collapses entirely. But the U.S. won't, and is reportedly considering greater involvement in the war-torn country. The U.S. knows it is on the brink of collapse, but refuses to go down peacefully. From the point of view of the powers that be, as long as every nail of resistance can be broken, the American hammer will continue to lead the world in international affairs. But even at this, as this report indicates, it is precisely because of America's hubris that it is, or that it has found itself in this position in the first place. In this context, the report is somewhat contradictory and only further encourages the United States to provoke further hostility from aggrieved players on the world stage. Carrying on these practices and exacerbating them is totally nonsensical, but doing so continues to be the go-to mantra of the U.S. war machine. There's no stopping. We'll give you more fake news. We'll do more fake beheadings. We'll show you more fake videos. That's all we know how to do. It's all we've ever done, and we will continue to do it. So that we can say, when we go to war, look at this, what happened. But by that time, we're all going to be standing around saying, it's pretty obvious you guys have been faking it massively this whole freaking time. That's not going to work on us anymore. And they're going to try it anyways. And they're going to ultimately say, you know, maybe you're right, but we don't care. We're going to do it anyways. Keep paying your taxes, shut your face, and go buy some more stuff you don't need with money you don't have. That's what they're going to tell us.